In the previous video on data binding, we had a look at how you can control the underlying the structure of the underlying XML file that stores the data that you type into a form, simply by making sure that as you drag objects onto the form, they're given appropriate names. What we're going to do now is to take a closer look at how we can tweak and change and modify that underlying XML file by clicking on the Data Model tab of Avoka SmartForm Composer. In the Data Model tab, firstly on the right hand side, we'll see all of the fields that are bindable, all of the fields that can contain data or may contain structural elements of the XML file. So as you can see, here are the various fields. And on the left hand side, what we see is the structure of the XML file that would be generated based on the current fields. Now, I may want to tweak this in a few ways. Firstly, I might decide that at the moment the structure of the XML file completely resembles the structure of the form, including both section level 1 and section level 2. So there's section level 1, section level 2, section level 2, another section level 2. That may create an XML file that's a little too deep. I want to simplify that. So to do that, all I'd need to do is click on the section level 2 under bindable fields, double click, and change the binding type. We'll come to some of these other fields later. Change the binding type from bound to skipped, process children. So I'm going to skip over this particular section, but I'm still going to include its children in the XML schema. Watch what happens on the left-hand side in the XML structure when I do this. You'll see that the name element disappeared and given name and family name are now appearing directly below applicant. I might do the same with contact details. Skipped. Now, I could also have chosen not bound, in which case, instead of skipping over the contact details and binding its child, it would have completely skipped that entire section of the tree and contact phone itself wouldn't appear. So I might do that for the gift. Perhaps we're not really interested in what gift they're interested in. So I'll double click on gift, select it to be not bound, save, and you'll see that gift now disappears from the structure of the XML file. Now that allows me to control which sections and widgets appear in the XML. We also had a look at how you can control the names of the items in the XML file, and you can do that here too. To change, for example, from given name to, say, first name, all I need to do is double click on given name. And as we can see here, the binding name, which is the name used for binding, is by default set to the name of the field. However, I can overwrite that, so I might call this first name. Now, when you do this, you do need to be aware that XML has specific rules about names of elements in an XML file, and the main rules really are no spaces, no punctuation other than underscores. You can also use a hyphen, although we generally don't recommend that. So as long as your name is correct, your XML file will come out correctly. Save that, and again on the left hand side we'll see that instead of given name we're going to be using first name, and I might do that again and say last name instead of family name. If you want to change any of these things, you can of course do that, and the easiest way to revert back to the default name, for example, if I wanted to revert family name back to its default name, is simply go into the stack backtrace. As you can see here, the binding name is defined in the form. I can simply click on the stack backtrace, click restore. That'll remove that value and default it back to $name, which is the reference to the name of the field. And I'm done. There's one other thing I can change. By default, if you remember from the last video, the root element name of the data model or the XML file is Avoka SmartForm by default. However, I can change that to suit my needs. If I click update, change it to my XML file, or whatever you'd like, and we're done. Let's go and have a look at what the generated XML looks like. As you can see, all of the changes that I've made in the data binding have been applied. Firstly, the root element of the XML containing the data is now called my XML file. The applicant is the next level down, and we don't have those section level 2s showing up. The first name element name is called first name rather than given name. And if you remember down here, we decided that we didn't care about, or we didn't want the type of gift to appear in the XML, and it doesn't. All very easy. While we're here, let's just look at a few other things that may be useful if you're looking into the XML that's generated. If I click on the Artifacts tab, that is a series of files that are generated when you preview your form. And the files that are generated, let's have a look at them. The first one is called the data binding, and that's the name of my form, seed. The seed file is an empty XML file that represents the structure of the file. Let's take a look. Pretty straightforward. You can see that this is an XML file that represents the overall structure of the XML without any of the data. This is really useful, particularly if you're starting to pre-populate forms. This can be used as a starting point for an XML file that is used for pre-pop. Pre-pop is done through the Adobe Lifecycle Forms component, which is part of Lifecycle. The other file that you may be interested in is databinding2.xsd. XSD is a format called XML schema or XML schema definition. And the XML schema definition is a file that you can hand over to your IT department that describes the syntax and structure of your XML file. So rather than being a sample XML file, it's actually a description of what that XML file is going to look like. Let's take a look at that. I need to use a special tool in order to open this up and view it in a nice way, and we'll see that in a moment. Here is the XML schema file displayed in one of the tools that allows you to view these in a graphical format. As you can see, the structure of the file is maintained and displayed exactly as I designed it in the Data Model tab. The underlying XML is shown below, or the XML schema definition, and you can see all of those are inserted correctly. Handing this over to your IT department will, as I said, give them an exact description of the XML that they can expect to be coming out of your forms.